Sue Milton. Technology. I can see what I'm speaking about on this screen. Yeah. Okay, I am Sue Milton. My day job is running my own little organisation. So tiny, there are 5 of us and we're scattered across the world. New Zealand to Canada. Somewhere between is Europe and South Africa, so that's where we are. What the 5 of us focus on is how to improve the governance in organisations of all shapes and sizes, in all sectors and any parts of the world. We have overlapping specialisms, so it won't come as a surprise to you that mine is technology. It's also audit, it's also risk assessment, it's all strategy, but you kind of get the picture. That's what I do. But I'm not here to talk about my day job. I'm here to talk about AI. Just say that I love AI. It's so fast that it effectively gives me an answer to any question I set it using the accumulated knowledge of the world. What is that? I mean, as a child, I was going through encyclopedias, and I still love encyclopedias or dictionaries, but if you didn't quite know how to spell or didn't quite know what the subject was, it was sometimes very difficult to find that information. Okay, AI is not perfect, but it gives me a great starting point, and that's what I love. Can't have a conversation without a but, can we? And what's my but? Well, it's been mentioned already. AI gets things just a little bit wrong a lot of the time. There lies an issue. If we are taking important decisions based on AI without any form of verification or any form of verification that we can trust and can demonstrate that the AI is working correctly, then there could be some absolutely catastrophic decisions. I do a lot of my work in the financial sector, and there, if AI is generating the annual accounts that is then shared with investors, and there's flawed information, both the corporate leaders and the investors could be putting their money in their activities not quite where they should be. And that could have long-term consequences. So, bear in mind, AI gets a lot just a little bit wrong. Which is why I see AI not as my counterparty, my equal peer group, not yet. I see AI as an apprentice. An amazing person to have. AI works tirelessly to respond to anything I ask it to do. But because AI has no judgment, it has no memory, it has a habit of conveying something as being right when it might not be. Now, the right and it might not be is down to me, the human being, interpreting based on how it has responded to the prompt I've given it. Arguably, it is my fault, but nevertheless, human beings being human beings, because we know how to interact with each other most of the time, we pick up on those subliminal messages that we give each other. I'm imposing that on the AI. So, hence, I can be misled. Why? Go back to my financial sector and the audits there, the external audits, but in everything we do within our organisations, audit and assurance is of supreme importance, because that is the only way we're going to get some independent view just how good the AI is that we're using, given that the outputs it gives us and the resulting outcomes have a massive influence on what we do next. So back to actually auditing. Auditors are now using more AI tools. Ditto the business. Are we actually in a position where AI is doing its own homework? This is what I call the AI auditing enigma. For me, there are three main buckets, but I think they're interchangeable in different combinations of this. But we need to ask ourselves, if I'm carrying out an audit, internal audit or external audit, doesn't matter. Where am I using out this audit? If I'm going out for an audit, do I explicitly know, or is it implicit, that I'm actually auditing AI itself in the business? Or, you know, oh my gosh, there's a data question. How much of the data that I'm interrogating, with or without a tool, that may or may not be AI, has actually been generated by AI? Oh gosh. So, the audit perspective, from the internal audit perspective, since I'm trying to do the best for my company, we need to justify everything we do with our AI tools. It was mentioned earlier, but we need to assure our own AI tools before we can launch that as part of the toolbox in our AI or in our audits. So my conversation might go slightly off track from the internal audit perspective. Might go slightly wide of talking about AI audit tools, but because the enigma, I think what I'm going to say and what follows next will be equally valid, whether I'm auditing AI, whether I'm using AI to audit, or whether the data was created by AI. They're kind of all interchangeable. I don't think we can separate that easily anymore. So, welcome to informed use of AI. Thank you to, I know, hundreds of people. These are just some of the main ones. But when you get the presentation, there are loads of links. And I have to say thank you to all these anonymous people that I did a Google search on to see, get some information to either refute or confirm my own thinking. So now we come to the main part. What are we actually going to talk about? Well, why we must take ethics into account. So we're going to begin and end with ethics. Picking up on the enigma, what is the actual auditing scope that we have when we're dealing with AI? Actually, what about the data? That's that in any way whatsoever. What is it doing to the way we evaluate controls? And why the human in the loop is so important? We are the informed people. We are the wise people. AI, remember, is fast, but really it is stupid. It can only follow instructions. This list that you can see behind is pretty typical. The names, words come up all the time. You know, ethics hasn't got a moral code. We're aware that essentially, having been in the past trained on predominantly white males in the US, most of the world has AI against ourselves, right? Most of us in this room have AI not seeing us objectively. It will be biased. I mentioned hallucinations, we talked about face recognitions, putting as well the environment and the intelligence getting increasingly important with data centers and the amount of power that AI needs. And we've touched on employment and skills. Now, despite AI's great opportunities and its kind of downsides. We're still building AI. We're building AI in our image. But of course, AI is a machine. It's not a human being. Some things where we are trying to get AI to mimic us, but then it's not quite. So, this is a very simplified version of how I see AI as humans being. When we think, when we act, we are firing off these multiple directions all the time. They probably do certain frequency. And yes, we do use maths in our brains without realizing it. That's where AI thinking mimics humans. It's maths. AI tends to be what I consider to be more linear, more multi-level. So take one line, lines, and see that it begins with, I've got some information. I've been given some instructions. I remember those formula and codes where I was questioning the other panel about. And from that, I can do something about that data. And then I can refine it in some way because there are various mathematics and balances. And, to say whether or not this data is fully valid or partially is, can I drop some of it? Should I retain some of it? And it'll come up with an answer. That's just on line 1. And with that, it says, but I have another neural network I can get down to this next line, and it'll stomp the output from line 1 into line 2, and it effectively goes through the same process, refining it again and again. To do, and then it's your output, and there is your response. Now, when we have a discussion, when we analyse stuff, we actually apply past experience and thinking, common sense, to say, that's broadly correct, or I need to question this and find out a bit more. For AI, it is all on probability, really. What are the chances that this is the right answer? And that's it. Even if it's only 20% correct, if that's the best answer it can give you, it's only 20% correct, that's fine. Bias. Now, this is an interesting mimic of bias because it's not quite mimicking it in the human sense. We will have bias. Bias, in fact, is a good thing. It saves us energy, it saves us time. And we get bias based on past experience. Now, if we're still out in the wild with our caves hunting, then probably bias that says that is a large mammoth with tusks that is out to get me is a very good thing because you'll run away. You won't try and analyse what this creature is. You'll go based on experience. AI probably wouldn't know that and would sit there quite happily until the mammoth came and crushed it. So when I say that AI has bias, it's not really mimicking it. It's actually in the data. And because it relies on the data and has no judgment and has no memory, it doesn't know and recognise its bias. So it actually just replicates the bias in humans. It doesn't mimic there. So the bias is slightly different. Now, why is there that sort of bias? Why can the data have that kind of poison aspects in it? It's because we as humans assume, partly on bias, and sometimes the assumptions are patently wrong. Yep. Hindsight tells us, but at the time we've made an assumption. So we do get things wrong, and obviously we're great at lying. So if that's all built in, then AI is going to absorb all of that and use it as part of its response, even though it doesn't realise it's faulty information. I put that with hallucinations because this is where the obvious output from AI says that AI's got it wrong. It's lying to us. It's telling us a story of something that's completely untrue. But that's because, based on probability and the data available and the prompt we've given it, and it wants us to give the best answer,
It will give us an answer and it'll fill in the gaps to the best of its ability. So everybody, did you know you are talking to the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England? ChatGPT told me that's who I was. I did ask it to write my CV. I didn't actually guide it to where to look. So obviously looked at my LinkedIn profile. It probably looked a bit of Facebook, a little bit of social media. And he obviously did a name search somewhere because, yes, I have worked for the Bank of England. And I can see why it thought I might have been a Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, because I had interacted with various governors and deputy governors in the past. So it put this story together. It was the best answer it could give me based on my prompt and the scope of information available. Yeah, that was untrue. However, so if you want a Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, I'm yours. Okay, where do we go from that? Oh yeah, this was just to remind you that AI just see our little apprentice as made up various levels. So to me, AI is the sum of all those parts. To me, in simplified form, machine learning is what uses the data. The neural networks make the decisions. We didn't really talk about deep learning this morning, but deep learning where it goes more and more refinements, and you get that. And I think the conventional wisdom is if we have more than 3 levels of neural networks, we're into deep learning now. So we start off with something that is woolly and wide, even in AI terms, and the more neural networks we go down to, theoretically at least, the better the answer, because it has gone through more verification stages, applied more probability and statistics to say, yeah, this is what the best answer can be. But for all its speed, AI is severely mentally challenged. Okay? It has no moral code, so it can't apply any societal value. It can't remember things, and it can't learn from just seeing or hearing things once. Absolutely no good. It needs hundreds, if not thousands of iterations through the training data and practice to actually know in mathematical terms what the answer might be. Now, the training is actually quite interesting because that relies on a lot of different things. And I'll try and come on to that in a minute, if only I could remember what I wanted to say about it. But all I want to say is, so we need to provide a lot of assurance that it remains in what I call decision tolerance. If I need to know what a budgerigar looks like, then having an AI that responds and says these are all brightly coloured birds is insufficient. But if I want to know birds that come from areas of the tropics, for example, at least originally, then maybe that broader answer is okay. So think about how accurate, which can be quite wide, for all tropical birds, and how precise, I just want budgerigars, your AI has to be for a particular task. Now, the more challenged AI is, I reckon, the more help it needs. We are asking a lot from AI. There are huge expectations. Innovation in AI is unbelievably fast, really exciting. But we said earlier on this morning, somewhere is the coder. In the background, it's a piece of software. Because we enable it to identify its own data, depending on the prompt, and to identify the process it's going to take, we need at least now 6 areas of expertise. We mentioned engineering, the maths, the data science. You've got to understand how humans behave and the behavioral psychology. And if we're using it in business, of course, we've got to have that business knowledge. And because we want so much data in AI and that needs so much power, we've got to think about the environmental impacts. Because I reckon, and people tell me, that AI can actually manage the environmental impacts. I believe that's up to a point. So once per unit, it might say, right, if that's the amount of power we're starting with, we can decrease it. Because we want that much AI and forever growing, actually the net result will still be more. It will increase over time, even if per data center we're using less energy. There'll just be loads more data centers. So let's talk about the aspects of the auditing scope. Oh, no, I'm not. Any questions, any comments?
Add ethics to that.
Yeah, I suppose I'll put that under human behavioural psychology. But yes, no, you're right. Ethics. I mean, I started with ethics. So yes, you're right.
Psychology is a bit different from ethics, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But behaviour, I suppose, yeah, not going to argue a point. You're right. Ethics is including. To me, behaviour does include ethical values, moral values, how as a society we work together, where individually we might actually work slightly differently. You know, people react differently in a crowd than they would do with just one or two other people. So yeah, but you're right.
I have a question.
Yes, please do.
Would political knowledge have an influence on that as well?
Yeah, good point. I was trying to keep the politics out of it, but actually you can't. I mean, you know, we spoke this morning about the EU AI Act and our own things coming in. So yes, politics will play a part because that will give us, I suppose, a type of framework in our particular country in how we can use AI, if nothing else. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just wondering, buyers would come under 4?
Yes, I would do. Yes. Yeah. But again, bias. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
We have 120 acknowledged cognitive biases so far, so there's too many to list on there.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Just Google. Number of cognitive biases. Avoid Copilot.
I think I'd also stick.
Yeah.
I think I'd also stick security on there.
Sorry.
I think I'd also put security on there.
Yes. Yeah, you see the list. How many areas? I've come up with 6. You're right. Don't forget the traditional areas of expertise that we have already in cybersecurity, IT security, data security. So I think not only do we have at least 120 biases, we've probably got at least 120 roles. Absolutely. Okay, shall I move on now? Right, let's see about the aspect of the AI auditing scope. We spoke about it this morning. We talked about narrow AI and Gen AI. I like to use the word focused. Okay, it might be my own word. Because this is where AI has been built to perform a particular task. I've given the one about, given this is a risk and assurance control thing, you can have risk assessment software, AI powered. But then if you think about the weather, meteorological offices, you know, AI just about weather, or AI just about agriculture, or AI just about EV cars, whatever it might be. Being narrow doesn't mean it hasn't got a lot of functionality, it isn't very clever, but it's focused on a particular subject. And for me, that is brilliant. I mean, in agriculture, having that focused AI that can test the soil through different parts of the field to say, the north part needs fertilizer, the south part doesn't. Or the centre needs rain because it's on a slight, needs to be irrigated because it's on a slight hump, but the edges don't. That can save a lot of energy, conserve a lot of our water, and produce the best food at the cheapest price in terms of cost of growing. Yeah. Gen AI, of course it's brilliant, but it's down to us to get the right prompt. And there is AI that can teach you or provide prompts for you as well now. I mean, AI will do anything for you, including giving you prompts. And I think when it comes to focused, I think when it comes to our auditing, we are going to use, or already are using, a combination of both. Now, I said I mentioned training and testing. Let's go on to that. Okay, I've said AI is an apprentice, but when it comes to training, what we're really talking about is finding a set of instructions that say, dear AI, this is a picture of a cat. Look at it, try and remember what it looks like. So when I give you the next picture, you can make a decision about whether this is a cat or it's not. Yes or no. It will do that, not because it can see, not because it can visualize, not because it can learn from experience, but we give it a weighting. So you might say there's a 50% chance, call it 50, the weighting, that it's a cat or it's not. And if the AI somehow decides it is a cat, you can say, well done. I'm going to reinforce that by raising the weighting to say 55%. And next time round, hopefully it will get it right. If it doesn't, then the weighting goes down. Eventually, the weightings will be adjusted. So when we start training AI with the data, we can randomly pick the weightings, all those measurements that we need to work out how accurate it is. And it starts with human guessing. Now back to the child. If the toddler comes in and goes, Mummy, Daddy, there's a monster in the room, latently we're going to give a low weighting that there really is a monster in the room. We might go in and find it's a big teddy and it's scared, because when you're little and this big teddy is really big, it could be scary, it is a monster. But by the time that person has become an adult and they say there is something really weird in that room, we'll rate that view more highly and perhaps take a few more precautions and different questions about how we investigate it. We dismiss it less than we might do with a child. So I'm not saying we should ever dismiss children, but realise from their context, they see the world differently. And this is AI. It doesn't know the world. It's going to have to be taught like a child, which means in the early days, we need to give it a lot of attention to coax it in the right direction. And once it's been, whatever it is, fully trained, we can step back a bit and let it be used in production, in real life, for us, to help us. Now, I'm going with that. So, what I'm saying is, between the focused, as I call it, AI and Gen AI, I think Gen AI has now got to the stage where it can do the flow of the process very well for us. From planning through to reporting. Doesn't mean the auditor's not involved, doesn't mean the businesses aren't involved. Yes, of course they are. But it can do that hard graph work, as we've seen demonstrated this morning. And the focused AI will be there to actually do the detailed work. Let's interrogate the data sets, let's analyze them, let's do the anomalies. Wonderful. So focused and Gen AI coming together. Then, of course, given that explicitly or implicitly we're going to trip over AI in the audits, we can use those same AI focused tools to say, okay, we've identified there's an AI model here. Can we assure that? So that the evidence we are receiving from our audit can be seen as valid. I'd say it can work out where shadow AI is for us. Like shadow IT, it lurks. And of course, if there's outputs coming from AI, we can use AI to analyse that. And more, it will be us with AI reviewing AI, as well as the outputs and outcomes coming from what the AI does for us all, which leads us to the data. Oh gosh, what about it? Now, sorry, I keep running ahead of myself. Any views, thoughts, questions, challenges? Yes.
When you say we dismiss it less, do you think we'll ever reach a point where we're inclined to believe it over our own biases and subjective views?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question. So can you repeat, please?
So when you refer to the thoughts or opinions that AI produces, and you say we dismiss it less, do you think that because it's going to be using more and more of the data that's out there, we will reach a point where we are more inclined to believe the outputs of that system over our own subjective opinions?
Yes and no. So I think if you remain an expert, you won't dismiss our own opinions. You will check and rethink. I think where the risk comes is if we're in an area that is new to us, we have very little knowledge. If AI comes back with what looks like a really good response, we might believe that unquestionably because we don't know enough about the subject to be able to challenge. This is the whole problem. For any subject, when we're trying to provide constructive feedback, we need sufficient information and knowledge to be able to do that. So that is a problem. A third aspect, which relates to the more negative side, is that if we haven't gone through the stages of learning, because now all we need to do is press on AI to give us our PhD in whatever subject we want, where's the learning gone in that? So yes, ultimately, I think we have a risk. And humans, we are lazy by nature. I mean, we're there as human beings to conserve energy, not use it. So why bother doing it when AI can do it for us? And that is a big risk. That is part of us being humans. Anything else? Yes.
What do you think is the role of auditors if all the legwork is being done by the AI? That's one aspect.
Yeah.
And the other aspect is there a risk that it will get detached from the data, from the information? We're only seeing the summary. Could we become detached and lack thorough understanding?
Yes.
What's our role really now?
So I'm going to come on to control evaluation, but the IT auditor, the AI auditor, the person, not the tool, is there still to independently verify that the way the company is being run with whatever tools it uses, whatever people it uses, is still appropriate for the business. It's an independent verification. So to me, it still remains the same. Business identify what it needs to do and how to achieve it. It will set up the processes and policies and have the resources it needs. Business will evaluate the hazards, risks, and controls it needs. Make sure the business will work as effectively as possible all of the time. And then it will be internal audit that still assesses whether that environment is appropriate and whether the controls are still appropriate for what the business is trying to achieve. AI can do all of that, but we still need to look at the outputs from AI. I'm concerned. I will come to you. So that was the first bit. The second bit was, do we become detached from the data?
The nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I think the answer is a big risk of that. We're getting further and further removed from what I call the data coalface. And if we're not careful, yes, we will use grip. I mean, if I want to use Gen AI to give me access to the world's collective knowledge, well, that's great. But I don't know enough to know whether the answers I got back on biomedical sciences, for example, I know nothing about them, was right or wrong. All it does is give me a feel of the subject matter. And that won't be enough. Not if we really want to say this information is valid on which I can base decisions on.
Could be, sorry,
Sorry.
could the one solution be if there's something is high risk, then you actually dig down more into that?
Yes, I mean, that is the obvious solution. If something is flagging up as high risk, you would do more scrutiny over it. The problem is, I think underlying this is, how are we going to lose our ability to identify if something really is high risk? What's it been based on if AI's found it? So I will come back to you. This person at the front, I'll come back. You, and then, sorry, thank you. Sorry, please, back to you.
I was just going to underline your point, the AI on AI, using AI for sure, models, etc. Of course, that was Generous Reversal Networks was developed in 2014 by Ian Goodfellow, and that's a potential growth area, I think, to be used in the audit and risk, in the risk, the audit area.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Yes, please.
Yeah, had a question, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just going back to assessments. So can AI reduce the subjectivity of risk assessment? Because
Can AI reduce the subjectivity of AI assessments? I believe it can. I can believe that can be its great strength. But how it makes that assessment is based on the algorithm code and data. And if any of those have some form of bias in them, then it's not going to be as objective as it appears to be. So there's always going to be a risk. But I think in general terms, it should take the immediate emotion out. So if I go and do a risk assessment, I'm speaking to you, for example, you and I are going to have a little bit of a mental argument about whether something is high, medium, or low, for example. There's a bit of an emotional response from all parties concerned. AI is not going to do that. It's just going to look at the two-dimensional information based on the information it's got, and will come up with an objective decision, but it could be biased. That's the risk. But it will be much more objective, I think, in its emotion, because it hasn't got an emotional response. Yes.
I think sometimes those conversations are emotional because we've got that contextual understanding of the business and potential impact. And the use of AI in the context of impact in the risk equation, I think, is really problematic.
Oh, yeah, no, which is another good point. Because a lot of it is all about context. We all know as risk managers, a particular risk that, I don't know, I'm trying to think. Clear desk policy, for example, right? Nothing to do with IT, but just a clear desk policy could be much more important in one part of your business where there's intellectual property or related to research than it might be in a general office. So it's a risk in both. It needs to be controlled, but the impact of a breach of that clear desk policy could be vast in terms of pounds and reputations in one part of your business and less so in another. And AI won't necessarily know that context. Fully agree. Anything else? Please. 3, 2, 1. Yes.
The use of AI to assure AI models.
Yeah.
Well, it's my assumption here that the AI that's being used to assure the AI model itself is more superior to the model that it's assuring. How can you assure that?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great thing to raise, actually. To me, there is no real hierarchy. It depends. So I would say using AI to assure, that is a focused, narrow AI that has been produced. I'm going to give you a real life example. I work with a company that's based in Singapore, and what they've got is a set of AI models, different models, but let's call it one AI, that will look through millions of annual reporting accounts. So it's a financial thing. And what it's trying to do is identify from historic information on any one company that you choose to give it, whether there is a chance that this company is going to fail. It's looking for red flags. So it will start looking for creamy coloured, yellow, amber, and it flagged them all away because the founder of that company noticed that when a company does fail, there have been loads of red flags over the last few years, and a load of amber and a load of yellow, and nobody did anything about it. So that's what his AI does. But I challenged him. I said, well, how do you know it's right? Well, he's got another set of AI that has been written to challenge. Now, because of his intellectual property, he hasn't shared quite any of the detail of that. So this is just a very high level of his high level explanation. But he also uses Gen AI to interrogate, because Gen AI comes from a different perspective. So if you like, he's got narrow AI based on focused AI with Gen AI combined. And then there's another AI that assesses all those outputs to come up with a conclusion about just how true the assessment of those cream to red flags are over the accounts. Now, it's been around for 5 or 6 years, and you have to pay at least $400 a month, at least. $4,000 a month, depending on your size. But regulators use it, and big banks and insurance companies use it because they want to check that where they invest is still safe, whether it's a loan or buying shares in equity or something. But yeah, so one is not more superior than the other. It's kind of a bit like, not quite sure what it's like. It's a bit like probably bits of Lego. They each have a purpose if you're building a Lego model, and you need them all for the final result. So that's the kind of analogy, best analogy I can come up with at the moment.
Would it be a better analogy to think of consulting multiple experts rather than?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Put the human in the loop. Thank you. Very good. Yeah. Like on multiple experts. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Right. I'll move on to the data now. So what about the data? Okay. It's all about data governance. And most of us in this room, if not all of us in this room, know all about data governance. Even if we don't have to work in it ourselves, we're aware of what we should be doing with the data. I think with AI, data governance is now on steroids. But it has to be slow release in the sense, we're going to do it fast, we're going to do it now, but do it very, very carefully. And from this morning's talks, you realise a lot of effort has to go into actually examining the data before you can train the model, let alone use that model in real life. So do it fast, carefully. Now, one of the things that AI is all about that is different from traditional computing is that AI works with data on the supply and the demand side. So I think there are a number of economists in the room. So I thought I'd put this in. So if you think about AI, it needs data to come out with a response, which is data in itself. And both our prompt and our data form more data. So it keeps going around in a circle. So it's continually refining itself. And that has certain concerns, which we'll come on to. But what I want to quote here is from a lady called Claire, who is very concerned about how AI is going to be used in financial reporting in the future, well, now and in the future. She's saying that anything that comes out with AI, which is paraphrasing what she's saying, remains the preserve of the people responsible for them. I mean, she's talking about financial reporting, opinions and decisions set out in the reporting remain the preserve of the people responsible for them. And that's really important. So going back to the liability that we talked about briefly this morning in the AI Act, this is in a sense the common sense approach of what the EU AI Act is all about. We're all responsible. Where does it leave us as internal auditors? Well, I have to say, like it or not, we're going to have to look at the data pipeline. Where's it all coming from? Where's it all going to? What's happening to in the middle? With precision. Now we need to know the detail. The devil's in the detail, and somebody's got to do it. As I said early on, if the data, well, as we all know, if the data's poor, the garbage in, garbage out, and that be catastrophic for an organisation. from, as we had with Amazon, how it discriminates when it hires, companies hire, and huge financial mistakes. So part of the big pipeline questions are no different to what we've done before as auditors. Where does our data come from? Are we allowed to use it? That's not just GDPR, which is important, but the whole, has it been scraped from somewhere unlawfully without their knowledge? Is it representative of the population this piece of the AI is trying to serve? Do we look to refresh it? And, is access to it secured in a way that we can trust it? So having cleansed it, having collected it, having got it somewhere safe, is it still safe to use, or is it now being messed with? So, simple slide about data governance. We've just got to find where our data is. We've got to define it in those ways for the labelling, the taxonomies. We've got to work out what the supply chain of our governance framework is. Who has access to it? Who's responsible for what? And there's this continual struggle that we have in IT. It's got to be safe and secure, but it's got to be usable. We're just going to lock it up and let's throw away the key, then let's forget about AI, let's forget about the data. So, and as we know, it's data in all its guises, wherever it is. If we're using it, it's sitting there, not being used at the moment. And again, we have to, in our refreshing of our AI and our data, is the AI still fit for purpose, or do we need to retrain it in some way? Because what we want to avoid is that the data has now become inappropriate, just like controls can become inappropriate as the business evolves. It doesn't even need a major shock. It can just be evolving. It's now historic. It's old. It's out of date. Its focus is wrong. Or if there's something coming in, we talked about outliers this morning, is it coming in that's really skewing? The whole subject about outliers is quite interesting because I like outliers. I don't want them to skew the information, but I like to examine what the outlier is telling me. Because, back to financial reporting and companies, is the outlier telling me there's a little amber flag or a very big red flag that I need to be aware of? Don't necessarily ignore outliers in our audit work. Examine them, but human judgment is there. Make sure you apply them or ignore them based on what you're trying to achieve. But when it comes to the data, yes, make sure it's not skewed away so that everybody that we can only employ has to be under 10 for some reason when you're having children. You don't want that kind of skewing. And then there is a security, which is a whole big piece in itself, right? You can have another conference on this. How do we ensure our data remains safe and secure in the world of AI? But otherwise, it's kind of the same sort of thing. Are we leaking data without us realizing it in the prompts that we ask? Back to consent, bias, the ownership rights, and violation of the laws. So any questions or concerns, anything about data?
Just a question about data governance, I suppose. And I'm just thinking with that sort of old-fashioned lens of data classification, information classification, how the hell do you implement, operate meaningful information and data classification in a way that produces the outcomes that it was intended to produce in the world of AI? Or do you just have to put this one blanket wrapper that says untrustworthy?
Right. I think you have to have a level somewhere that says anything beyond that is untrustworthy. So use with caution. So I think if the data is yours, just like, when we're trying to do cloud security or something, where is our data? It's diversified around, it's no longer in-house. But if we can find where our perimeter is and can say, this is our data, and we believe, obviously, through internal control evaluation, thanks to internal audit, that that data is trustworthy and it's secure, then I think we're fine. And if that's all we're using, depending on the AI model that we're using, for what purpose, that's great. But if we have to now venture out beyond that, yeah, it's untrustworthy. So you've got to find another way of verifying it.
Just to answer the question, there are standards coming out as well for data sets.
Thank you.
I read an article a couple of weeks ago by an AI producer, bullet 3 there, which says that each subsequent iteration of the model will amplify and multiply existing biases. And that was worrying. I don't know if it's true, but he was an AI professional, and a producer. That worried me.
Yes, and this is a big thing. That's why we have to just continually refresh and review. So do you realise, I've got 5 minutes, right? We just need a whole new set of audit skills, tools, whatever they might be, just to protect against that sort of thing. So we're going to come on to jobs in a minute. We're going to move on to control evaluation now. There's not very much to say about this, except that AI turns all of the control evaluation on its head. But beforehand, we as people would assess the controls. Come up with evaluation. Now, we have an AI that does it for us, which is brilliant because it can do 100% checks 100% of the time with reporting constantly, which in today's world, a lot of organisations need. Not perhaps as a formal audit, not as a one-year annual report, but just for daily operations, which is absolutely wonderful. So I've got nothing against that. Remember, AI is still our apprentice. So AI is good. How it can handle what we used to do. It can examine if we're doing code checks so much better than any of us and so much faster. I mean, to me, it's that 100% check. You don't have to do a 100% check, of course, but to be able to do that is absolutely amazing because then we can have real patterns and really identify where some of these weaknesses are. We're trying to be predictive in our audits now, and the example is the health system where it's really important. We talk about continuous auditing, and of course, it keeps us compliant, which is most businesses are licensed to operate. But it's not perfect. So I say one of the things that as auditors we've got to do, when we used to do sample checks in the real business, auditor to business, we now have to do it auditor to IA output. We've got to do a sample check. We've got to make sure it is right as much as we can. We can't, if it's doing 100%, we can't do 100% check. But we've got to sample enough to feel it is doing the right thing in the right way. And what we also need to do is check that AI is safe and appropriate to use. So we're talking about a vulnerability and security check. And by vulnerabilities, most of us will think about those hazards and threats from outside. But I'm actually talking not only about that, but also about the quality of the data and the vulnerability of that, the prompts and everything that goes into it, which is now fed back into the data, and round we go again. So have we got AI to being a good state, suddenly being to a poor state when we should be getting to a better state? Those hygiene checks are going to be there all the time. Welcome to a new role. And we've got to make sure there's comprehensible, that in everything we do, other people can comprehend it, not just us, and they can contest it. Redress is going to be really, really important. I'm tired of the computer says. The computer said, and one of my friends has lost her pension because the computer thinks she's dead. I'm not kidding, it's an ongoing thing at the moment that I'm helping her with. Which means, sorry, questions have to wait, the human in the loop. Right, we have got to, as people, as auditors, make sure that the AI is still aligned with human and corporate values. If AI is removing lower level roles, we've discussed this morning, how we're going to get that expertise. Very difficult. Does it matter? I turn on a light switch, so I don't need to be an electrical engineer. I don't need to know how electricity is produced. maybe in 150 years' time, we can have. At the moment, we can't. Because not enough of us know or understand how AI works and built all the safety rails, those guardrails in place. Not yet. Maybe it'll come. I'll take your job and I'll put it in bold if it's nice, clean, linear and sequential, which quite often is writers and software developers. Yeah. But on the other hand, the Telegraph kindly told me that in their interview with bosses, AI will create my jobs and it removes, and we discussed some of them. Some of them are emerging now, just in our conversation in this room. And quite interesting, some jobs that you think would have disappeared don't seem to have done so. Accounting clerks, insurance underwriters, and travel agents and legal secretaries are the examples given here. And I believe at the moment, they have found the sweet spot where the human role is augmented by the AI role. And the sum of the two parts is greater than the individual parts. At the moment, who knows, in a year's or 5 years' time. So the consequence being is if we've got a skills gap, we need to train more, not less. And we've got to train people in those lower level jobs. So to end with ethics, remember AI accelerates as well as automates. Its own benefits and risks. So we need to ensure in everything we do as IT auditors, we avoid injustice and harm on behalf of our companies, because as auditors, something in everything we do is for everyone. Thank you for your attention.